objectives, government thoughts, okay, and objectives, they're goals, all right. So this particular Nearpod has a code of UJ79V. It should be in the classroom. Please join in. And as you can see, because we've discussed unemployment, all right, and we've said how unemployment was so bad that in economic theory we considered it to be evil. Now we're looking at another concept, a concept called inflation, and we're actually going to classify that as another evil in economics. So if we can jump in there, I see that we're joining in, so that's fantastic, into the Nearpod. All right, if we can get you all in there, that would be fantastic. All right, so the idea here is that we're going to have this was our government objective. Remember, we talked about there being low and stable prices. So in essence, what we're wanting to combat, if you will, is inflation. What we're wanting to correct is this idea of inflation. So the very first exercise for you is this one, and it's just you. I just want to know your thoughts. I don't want Dr. Google's thoughts, okay? It's just off the top of your head, what do you already think inflation means? Away you go. Go about a couple of seconds, have a go. What does inflation mean? All right, so what do you think inflation means? Now, again, I don't want Dr. Google to answer. I like you just to put your thoughts down. All right, have a go. Good work, team. Keep going. All right, let's see what we got here. Oh, goodness me, Connor. Okay, inflation. Price, okay. Price increase is Lynn. Good work. High change in price, okay. Tracy says when price increases, gradual decrease in the currency's value as more is printed. Okay, yeah, we can make that as an argument. Come on, Eric, have a go. Currency is worthless, maybe. Too much currency in the market, leading to the decrease in the value of the goods, so merchants raise their price to balance. Okay, so we've got some thoughts there. Price of goods increases because the supply. Okay, all right. Well, let's have a look at this picture here and see what you think here is going on here. All right. So here we've got some coffee. Now, I don't know about you. You're possibly not coffee drinkers. I'm not a coffee drinker either, to be perfectly honest. But this is what we are talking about with regards to inflation, right? So we're looking at a product that we're going to say is pretty general, okay? It's pretty standard. Yeah, I'm not talking about all the fancy coffees with all the cream and extra bits and bobs added into them. Just talking about a plain cup of coffee, all right? Now, apparently, according to Investopedia, in 1970 in America, you could buy a cup of coffee for 25 American cents. And as you see over time, right, what you need to spend to buy a cup of coffee actually has increased. See, this price here has actually gone up quite a bit. So 10 years, it's up to 45 cents, another 10 years, 75 cents, and so on until you get to 2019, when, again, just for a plain standard cup of coffee, right, $1.59. So, you know, about $1.60, say. And if you were to multiply that by 4, then you'd get the equivalent price in Malaysian ringgit. So I'm going to stop the sharing there, and I'm going to jump back to the meet. And we're going to open up the chat. And here's what I want to ask. Eric may not join the class. Here's some internet. Okay, easy. All right. Here's what I want to ask. Now, you may not be coffee drinkers, but you might remember other goods and services that you have paid for in the past that are now more expensive. All right. So come up with an example of something that you think about, that you remember it used to cost this much, but it now costs more. So when you go and you try and buy it, it's now more expensive. And if you could just fire whatever example it is you've got, fire it into the chat. Away you go. Sushi. Oh, yes. Okay. Other thoughts? Other products? It's a good one. Remember how much things used to cost when you were younger, how much they cost now, the price of newspapers. Okay, good. What else? All right. Oh, here we go. A few coming in now. Used to be 50 cents, really. Okay, 10 years ago, noodles cost 3 or 4 ringgit, and they're about 6. Yes, drinks, Coke, stuff like that, absolutely. Bread, price of watermelon. Can you give me 2 seconds, please? Yeah. Have a rest on the bed, please. Quiet, please. Great, fantastic. All right, what about, here's one I remember from when I was younger, the price of movie tickets. I don't know how often you've gone to the movies. Obviously, at the moment, we're not going to the movies. But how expensive were movie tickets when you were younger? I have gone to the movies when we've been here, living in Malaysia. Obviously, it was a while back now. And it was quite cheap, I thought. You may disagree with me, but we actually spent 7 ringgit because it was the holidays. We were going, during the day. There didn't seem to be a lot of people there, and they actually charged us 7 ringgit to go to the movies, which I thought was quite affordable. In New Zealand, if we were to go to the movies, we wouldn't get much change for 2 of us. We wouldn't get much change out of about 50 New Zealand dollars. All right, so that by comparison seems quite expensive. But in the past, when I used to go to the movies as a child, I can remember going to the movies for 5 New Zealand dollars. All right? But I think less than that. So does anybody remember the price of movies from years ago and how much it has possibly changed? How expensive is going to the movies now? All right. Don't remember back that far. Okay. All right. Let's jump back into the Nearpod. About 20 something. All right. Now 20 ringgit. That's a bit. All right. I'm imagining. Maybe it was cheaper back then. Okay. All right. Now here we go. Let's just jump back into the Nearpod. Staying here. No, staying here. No, staying here. Why? Because I want to keep you here. All right. So the general idea here that you're seeing is a rise in the price level of goods and services over time. That's what this image is supposed to represent for you. And as you've discussed, you can remember some goods and services that actually have increased in price over time. Now, inflation is a little bit more complicated than that because it's not necessarily an increase in the price of everything. We're talking instead about an increase in the price of it's basically an average, right? An increase in the average price of goods and services in the country. So by the end, what we're going to be able to do is to define and explain what inflation is and different methods to measure inflation. There's a couple of examples there. We're going to be discussing causes and consequences of inflation, and we're going to be looking at the policies that are used to try and combat inflation. Because remember, our government objective was, low and stable prices. So we want to perhaps avoid the idea of inflation, because if inflation is increasing prices, then we want to keep those prices low. Remember, we are voting politicians in on whether they can actually achieve these things.
Wait,
yeah.
Isn't inflation like sort of a good thing for the government? Because do they not like get more maybe income tax or like just taxes?
Yeah, potentially inflation could be seen as a good thing for the government. It could be seen as a good thing for the economy. One of the problems that you will find, and we're going to discuss this, is that when prices rise, and you will have seen, okay, all right. One of the problems that you will have seen is the idea that things, no, stay with me, please.
When can I go?
When I tell you to. Things become less affordable. Okay, so for everyday consumers like yourselves, if the price of bread rises, the price of sushi rises, the price of going to the movies rises, the price of petrol rises. If that happens,
the price of economy, money, business,
then you find your life to be less affordable. You're able to purchase less of these particular products than maybe you could before. However, you're absolutely right, Angie, is that it could be a positive sign. It could be that the reason why prices are rising is because there's expansion occurring in the economy. And that's a few steps ahead from where we're at the moment. But that's actually, yes, potentially a positive thing. But what we don't want to happen is, even if it is a positive thing, we don't want the price level to go so high that we can't afford to buy the goods and services that we need. All right. So yes, there can be positive sides or positive aspects to inflation. Absolutely. All right, well done. Now, so we need a definition. So this is our basic, good economics definition here. Inflation is a sustained, that means ongoing, increase in the general level of prices as measured by what's going to be called a consumer price index. Now, we're going to spend a bit more time on this consumer price index idea a bit later, all right? But this idea here is that it is an increase in the general level of prices. And this is what I was saying before. We're not saying every price is rising. We're saying that overall, if we were to average the prices of things, they would be increasing. And more specific than that, it's going to be, because not every price is rising, there's not going to be the same effect on every person. So some people will be experiencing inflation at a different rate to other people, okay? Because they won't necessarily be buying the same goods that they are. Now, the inflation rate, that's when we use the word rate, then we're talking about a percentage change. All right? We want a percentage change, and it then will be a percentage change in the consumer price index, this idea here, all right? And that will give us an inflation rate, right? And it's easier to think about inflation in terms of a percentage change. It gives us some sort of measure by which we can see how the economy is doing. Because remember, if we're talking about the government having a low or stable price level, then we're going to need to look at those percentage changes to see if, in our definition, they are low and or stable. So a rise in the price level of, as said, the general price level will mean a fall, a decrease in the internal purchasing power. So what you individually are able to buy. If things are more expensive, you are less able to buy them. That's in essence what we're talking about. But because we're talking about it across a country, right, then it's going to be quite significant. And if the rise is a big percentage change, right, then that decrease in purchasing power is also going to be big. So you can start to see now there's little hints here as to why we classified inflation as potentially being evil. All right. Now let's move on one. Now you can probably guess what you're going to be asked to do next. And it's a fill in the gaps exercise. All right. And go.
Can I go now?
No.
Okay, go. Can I go?
Okay, so just have a go, fill in the gaps.
Bye. No? No, no, no. 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 No.
All right, team, let's have a look. Oh, some good numbers there. Well done. All right, still got a couple to have a go. Come on, Yasin. Have a go. Good work. All right, now, if we look at what we saw there, inflation is the sustained increase in the general level of prices, right, as measured by the Consumer Price Index. We're going to do more work on the Consumer Price Index in the future. Don't panic. All right. The inflation rate is the annual percentage change in price level, right, in the prices, as measured, again, by the Consumer Price Index. A rise in the price level will lead to a fall in your purchasing power. In other words, the value of the money. So you have the money, but what you're able to buy with it is less. So you've got $100, but the thing that you want to buy with it used to be $50, so you could buy two. Now it's $75 and you've only got 100, so you can only buy one. When the price rises, your real purchasing power of cash decreases. Well done, team. Now I want to show you this. This is why, again, thinking about inflation, why economists might consider it to be evil. Because remember we talked about how you were going to lose your purchasing power. Well, this is a country that you may have heard of, hopefully, called Venezuela. Now, they've had an issue with inflation. Right? Now, these aren't the most recent numbers, but they are close. Right? So 2013, 41% inflation. So the price level, right, in general, the price level increased by nearly half increased by nearly half that particular year. The next year, 63%. The next year, 121. And as you see, that price level, that percentage change, went up higher and higher and higher. And 2019, the price level then was 3,497% increasing, right, each year. Now, I don't know if you can do the maths in your head, which you probably can, because you're all mathematicians. But if you consider the price of something relatively small, like a loaf of bread, and multiply whatever that price is by 3,497, right, you're going to find it becomes quite impossible for a lot of people to be able to afford. Okay, so again, this is one of the reasons why we talk about that loss in purchasing power that can happen when inflation becomes, in essence here, out of control. What's going on? Hold on. Yes.
So using those numbers, so that coffee from the beginning of the lesson.
Yeah.
So it was like $1.20 in 2010.
Yeah.
Like that, it's probably several $100s by the end of that.
Yes. Venezuela, it just went mental, because when you see hyperinflation, that's what that's going to be called. It's inflation that is increasing at a tremendously fast rate. Okay, so prices aren't just increasing; they're increasing by multiples of multiples of multiples, because it all accumulates. It's like interest in your bank. Yeah. So if it's 10% one year, the next year it's 10% on top of the extra amount. So it's that same basic principle, but this time it's not 10%, you're talking 40%, then 100%, then, as you saw, 3,000%. So each time those prices keep going up and up and up. And by the time you get to the 3,000%, it had already gone up the previous year by another couple of thousand, and the previous year by that by another 1,000. So it's not that it's done a one-off increase by 3,500%, it's that accumulatively over that period of time, it's gone up by an awful lot. So it will be a lot more expensive than a few $100s. It will be potentially several $1,000s, if not more, right? Because of that sort of cumulative increase in the prices that's occurring. And it's quite frightening. And you're actually going to do a bit of work on that. I will explain that in a couple of minutes. So, right, next jump next to the slide. Here we go. Now, inflation, as we said, was the sustained increase in the general price level. All right, so that's what inflation was. That's what we decided. Now, again, I want you to think. All right, so if that's what inflation is, what might deflation be? Okay, so if inflation is the sustained increase in the price level, what do you think deflation would be? And once you figure that out, I've already described hyperinflation to you. Right, but then once you figured all that out, what about disinflation? And just, word to the wise, it's not inflation that occurs in Jamaica, right? So what is deflation? What is hyperinflation? What is disinflation? Have a go, see how many of them you can get. If you need to ask Dr. Google, right, I want these two here, deflation and hyperinflation, to be you guessing. And then disinflation, if you have to, then you can look up disinflation from Dr. Google. Right, have a go. Got a couple of seconds, and then I'm going to explain what's going to happen next.
You have to put in more choice for the taxes.
You do. That's a lot.
We're going to put taxes is that Donald Trump is taxes going up.
In New Zealand, we don't have anything that's a trillion. Nothing. So the number 1 trillion in New Zealand really doesn't mean anything to New Zealanders, because we just don't have anything that's that big, except maybe grains of sand on the beach. The only way New Zealanders have of understanding trillions is to think of other countries like, say, China or America, who definitely deal in trillions in grain amounts.
Where's New Zealand?
New Zealand.
Yeah,
on the map, next to Australia.
Australia.
Deflation, general decrease. Yes, good. Yes, excellent. Well done, Connor. All right. Okay, waiting on the rest of you. Yes, indeed, Tracy. If you're talking about deflation, then it will be a reduction in the general level of prices. What about the other ones? Good. Okay, that looks suspiciously Dr. Googled, but yes. Okay. Well done, Yasin.
And Dr. Google.
All right, Andy. Yep, you're on the right path. You're on the right path for disinflation. All right. Just wait a couple more seconds. Remember, I want you to think. I don't want Dr. Google to think, because he's done enough thinking.
And so I just came up with a real life example of inflation over an extended period of time.
Oh, did you?
So the VOC, so Volta Ost Company, or well, the East Indian Company.
Yes.
So at its peak, it was valued at 249 million Dutch dollars, or because there was no euros back then.
Wow.
Now, in today's value, 7.9 trillion,
Goodness
more
me.
than almost any country except China or the US.
Goodness, that's a lot. Wow, well done. All right, team. Now, let's just jump very quickly back to the Nearpod, and then I'll explain what we're going to be thinking about. All right, good effort. Now, oh, yes. Okay, good. Right. So inflation was the sustained increase in the general level of prices, and you are absolutely right. Okay, deflation is going to be the opposite. So where this was a sustained increase in the general level of prices, deflation is going to be the sustained decrease in the level of prices. So if you imagine the number line, right, and everything above zero is positive, so that would be inflation, and then below the number line everything is negative, then that would be deflation, because you've got a sustained decrease in the price level. All right, so the percentage change is going to have to be negative there. Hyperinflation, as you have correctly pointed out, and as I mentioned to you before, is that extremely rapid increase in the price level. So it's inflation, but it's inflation that kind of adds to itself. It kind of is like a cycle. It just builds and builds and builds, like a feedback loop. Those of you who are musicians or who know musicians will probably know something about feedback, right? Where you hold the microphone in front of the speaker and it just builds and builds and builds the sound. Builds and builds and builds, okay? So that's called a feedback loop, right? So hyperinflation is exactly that. Disinflation, and a number of you got this absolutely bang on right, is a decrease in the rate of inflation. So inflation is still occurring. It's just that it's incurring at a slower rate. So it's like when you're in a car and the car is moving forwards. Okay, so you put the foot on the accelerator and the car is moving forwards. It is possible for you to reduce your speed but still be moving forwards. And that's the idea of disinflation. Prices are still rising. It's just that the rate of change of those prices is actually decreasing. All right, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to jump back to the meat here. Right, now, team, here's what's going to happen next. All right, here it is. Two very important things. First one, there's going to be a worksheet that will appear that's about Venezuela. It's going to appear in the classroom, in the classwork sector. It's about Venezuela. It's specifically about hyperinflation. Because the idea is I'm trying to expose you to, it's a real life situation, right? And there are questions, etc., that are within it. But it's a dramatic, extreme version of inflation, so that you can see those effects in a dramatic way, right? So you know why, again, we're considering inflation to be evil, okay? And then when we discuss deflation, which is another lesson or so away, you're going to do a bit of a comparison between the two, right? The idea here is that you're thinking about hyperinflation for Venezuela. Then the next thing is you're going to be looking at applying your understanding of the inflation rates. And there's going to be a wee template that will arrive. That's a case study where you are going to create your own case study about inflation rates in different countries, okay? And that's what I want you to do, right? That's it, right? So there's a worksheet on Venezuela, and then there's the case study template, and you will actually have a week to complete the tasks, but you will have a little bit of time now when you can actually work on those. So it'll be worksheet on Venezuela, and it will be template, case study, inflation rates in different countries. Okay, that's what we will be. I will be wanting you to do some work on. So it will appear in the classroom. It hasn't probably arrived yet, but it will be there very, very soon. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? Yes, fantastic. All right, so what will happen is we'll close off the meet now. If you have any particular questions, you can email me. Otherwise, as we say in the land of my birth, hei konera, which means goodbye for now.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mr. David.
Yeah.
See you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Can I now go? Thank you.
Thank you. See you. All right. Still
Sorry,
got-
Mr. David.
Yeah, no problems, dude. No problems. You all right?
Yeah. Also, are we just discussing about the inflation just now when I
Yeah.
leave?
Yeah, and then there will be a worksheet that'll appear in the classroom. All right, but if it's
Okay.
difficult at the moment for you to work through it, the lessons are being recorded, so at some point you can look to catch up. Okay,
Okay. Is it on your YouTube channel?
it will be, yes, very
Okay.
soon.
All right. Thank
Okay.
you, Mr. David.
All right, thank you. See you.
Have a nice day.
You
See you.
too. Bye.